Morning, welcome everyone. We're waiting a couple of minutes to allow more participants to join, and we'll start very shortly. Numbers are still rising, so we'll wait one more minute and to make a proper start. Thanks for your patience. While we wait, just to let you know that this session is being recorded and recordings will be available shortly after the webinar on the UKRI YouTube channel. Also, participants will be muted, as you might have noticed, for the whole duration of the webinar, but please do use the Q&A function, which will be monitored throughout the webinar. Okay, I think numbers are stabilizing. Okay, so good morning again. I welcome everyone to the ERC Proof of Concept Grant webinar delivered to you today by the UK National Contact Point for the European Research Council. Just by way of introduction, my name is Nino. I'm the UK National Contact Point for the ERC, and I will be your host today in this webinar dedicated to the ERC Proof of Concept. Today I'll be joined, and I'm delighted to be joined by several guests, which I will introduce in a moment, and they will bring different perspectives about the ERC, this particular ERC funding instrument. The webinar will run for about 2 hours until noon, and we will divide roughly this time into 2 parts. In the first hour, we will hear from Lina Volkers, a call coordinator at the ERC for the Proof of Concept call. She will cover all basic information about the ERC Proof of Concept grant, eligibility criteria, proposal development, submission process, and also touch on the evaluation process. Then my colleague Claire Griffin at the UK National Contact Point for the EIC, European Innovation Council, and also a National Contact Point for the European Innovation Ecosystems, EIE, will offer advice on how to apply the results of the ERC proof of concepts to transition to the ERC transition funding. We'll then take a break, comfort break, and continue in the second half with 2 testimonials. ERC proof of concept grantee, Professor Andrea Di Falco from the School of Physics and Astronomy at the University of St. Andrews, and then Robert Goodfellow, ERC proof of concept expert assessor. And hopefully we will have time towards the end also to take live some questions from the audience. However, if you're not able, if we won't be able to answer to all your questions live, you can always contact us at the dedicated functional inbox, erc-uk@acro.ac.uk. A few housekeeping announcements now. As I said, all participants are muted for the whole duration of the webinar. This webinar is being recorded, and recordings will be available afterwards on the UKRI YouTube channel. Please use the Q&A function to submit your question. You can also upvote your favorite questions, and we'll do our best to answer them live towards the end of the webinar. And now, before I give the floor to Line, I'd just like to touch on the essential elements of the proof of concept. In a nutshell, the ERC proof of concept grants allows ERC holders, grant holders, to explore the commercial and social innovation potential of the ERC funded projects. In essence, the ERC proof of concept is a complementary funding opportunity for starting, consolidator, advanced, and synergy grantees. It is evaluated as for all other ERC options on the sole criterion of scientific excellence, which has very specific evaluation elements, which Line will touch upon. Technically, this is given on a lump sum model, and it's a flat rate of 150,000 euros for a period of up to 11 months. But Line will explain that much better than me in a moment. But very importantly, it opens opportunity, a fast track, if you want, into the EIC transition, and we will see that explained by Claire in the second part of the first hour. Very important to get this right from the very beginning. You're eligible if you are current holder of an ERC main grant, or if your main grant ends less than 12 months before the 1st of January 2026. But Line will explain that in a moment. So very specific, but also very important to highlight. If you are a holder of an ERC grant, which is being funded under the ERC UK Right Guarantee, unfortunately, you are not eligible for this grant. I'm sure Line will cover this in a lot more details, but this was the initial timeline for the all evaluation process. The opening of the call is now being postponed, so Line will tell us in a moment. But you can see there are two cutoff dates there, one in March and one in September, and those remain in place. If you are a successful grantee, you will be expected to sign a grant agreement on the 1st of November 2026 or on the 11th of May 2027, respectively, according to the two rounds of funding. And now is the time to give the floor to Line Volker, a call coordinator at the ERC for the proof of concept calls. Line, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for joining us today. We know you're very busy, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Antonino. Let me just share my window here with you, so everybody sees the slides. Thank you very much for inviting me today and for organizing this event so that we can present to you, or I can present to you, our 26th version of, or edition of the ERC proof of concept call. And as Antonino just mentioned, we've been waiting with the publication and the opening for submissions to the 2026 call. And this is because we have agreed with our legal colleagues and our financial colleagues on a few small tweaks that we want to be effective for all our grantees when they apply for the 26 POC call. And these are the fact that until now, we were advising our applicants to only plan their activities for 12 months, whereas we would be signing the grant for 18 months. And this was to allow everybody a bit of delay in terms of recruitment and implementation of the activities, because they are very short grants, and also to reduce the number of amendments on duration. But then following COVID, when we had to also do extensions on POC and to align, how we do amendments and how we handle amendments across all calls, now amendments on duration will also be allowed for proof of concept. So now everybody can plan for 18 months. They will sign their grant for 18 months, and they can ask and justify an extension on duration as for any other ERC call. So that's the novelties that we are waiting to become effective. And the the amended work program 2026, which will also include the ERC plus call details, was expected to be in place early December. Now it will be postponed most probably until mid-January. So we will be sending out an information email to all grantees. We already sent one to announce that we're expecting a 3 weeks delay. Now we will have a further delay, and the new call publication and opening date is expected to be 17th of January. But we will send out this information to all grantees, and we will also announce it to all NCPs and to the program committee. It's a very new decision, so I just need, the final confirmation that this is how we will go. But now you know. So coming back to my presentation. So Antonino has already explained a bit of what I have on my first slides, but indeed the ERC offers the proof of concept grants as supplementary funding for our grantees who have already obtained an ERC grant. And the size of the grant is fixed by a commission decision for all Horizon Europe at 150,000, and we run it as a lump sum grant, which means you get an 80% pre-financing and then a final payment of the last 20% once your project is completed. But basically, these grants are given for you as PI to explore any idea that comes out of your main grant implementation that you see could have innovation potential with significant economic or societal benefits. And once we open the call, we run it as one continuous call, so you can submit a proof of concept proposal at any time from the time when we open until the last cutoff deadline. And we have, as we also had in 24 and 25, 2 cutoff deadlines, one in mid-March and one in mid-September. And what is very nice for me to announce is that we have a doubling of the call budget. So we are at 60 million euro for the call in 2026. We were at 30 million in 24-25. And these 60 million will be split between the 2 cutoff deadlines equally so. And this was a response from the Scientific Council based on the increased interest of our grantees to apply for proof of concept grants. We want to secure a significant success rate, so to keep it above 30%. This is what we're going to do. And with these 60 million, we will be able to fund 400 proof of concept projects in 2026. Yeah, and I put here a green around the 18 months. I already explained to you about the changes regarding duration and your planning of the activities that you should plan for 18 months, and we will sign the grant for 18 months. But just to put a bit in the funding landscape, the Scientific Council created the proof of concept scheme back in 2011 to give the ERC grantees a means to further explore the results coming out of their main grant, as I just explained. And it was thought at the time as a gentle push to help our grantees to start thinking about the potential use of their research developments in other areas or for other use cases. So to start thinking a bit as frontier innovators as well. And so the Scientific Council wanted to help shorten the bridge over the valley of death between, their initial research funding and final scale up to successful innovation of products or of services, which of course usually requires a lot of investment. So this is just the first seed money to make the first explorations of innovation ideas. And then with the creation of the EIC transition course under Horizon Europe, our POC grant holders, together with the EIC Pathfinder, the FET Open, and since last year also some Pillar 3 actions, but I think Claire will come back to all of these details. The transition, our POC grant holders are eligible, as also mentioned by Antonino, to apply based on the results of their ERC proof of concept grants for the EIC transition call. And this offers a much more substantial funding of up to 2.5 million euro for a duration of up to 3 years, and for projects with up to 5 partners. And I just want to show you here the number of applications and the success of our POC grantees in applying for EIC transition, because it's really something very interesting to our grantees. So the transition course has an eligibility window of approximately 3.5 years, starting when a proof of concept grant has run for minimum 12 months. So they usually have one deadline, or at least they had in 24 and 25, they had a September deadline, which means that anyone who has a POC grant that has been running for 12 months, when we get into December 26, can apply to the Transition 26 call. And for proof of concept, it means that we roughly have a pool of 550 to 60 eligible POC grantees for each transition call. And our grantees have been quite active in applying. So over the years 21-24, they have submitted approximately 40% of all transition proposals. And if you look at the years 22-23, roughly 165 POC grantees apply for an EIC transition grant. And you see also that in the table that POC grantees have been quite successful, both in 21, 22, 20, and 23, second deadline, 24, they have obtained almost 50% of the transition funds. And the latest results, which came out in January 25, there was 40 EIC transition grants awarded, and 19 of these went to POC grant holders. And those grants, those 19 grants, had a total value of more than 45 million euros. So it's a nice thing that we have now in Horizon Europe. So coming back to POC objectives and scope in Horizon Europe, the objective of the proof of concept call has not changed when we compare with Horizon 2020. It remains to facilitate the exploration of the commercial and social innovation potential of ERC-funded research. However, the Scientific Council decided that under Horizon Europe, there would be less of a focus on achieving direct economic or social impact as a result of a POC grant, acknowledging that it's a very small grant and it runs for a short while. They also decided that the scope of the call should be enlarged or widened to include further research activities that would be needed to explore an innovation potential of any idea proposed. The evaluation is based on the sole criterion of excellence, but we break it down in 3 elements. So the excellence of the breakthrough innovation potential, the approach and methodology, and the third is the PI, strategic lead and project management. And I will come back to that. We require, as for any other ERC call, that the data management is in place and that it's submitted within 6 months from the project start. And we also require from our host institutions that they have a general quality plan in place at the time when they sign a grant with us. So for the activities we fund, the applicants need to show that what they propose to be funded, that it draws substantially on what came out of their ERC funded research. We cover any activity to explore innovation potential. So any activity on the pathway from groundbreaking research towards innovation, activities at the very early stage of moving research ideas towards an innovation or socially valuable proposition. And as I said, including further research to translate and valorize research ideas to possible application, including development and testing to validate the idea in the lab or where it may take place. And then a few words on eligibility. So eligible grantees, PIs, they need to have an ERC grant which is either running or ends after 1st of January 2025. They need to show, as I said, that the POC idea draws substantially on the ERC-funded research, and we have a specific section in our application template for you to explain this link to the origin of your idea. As a PI, you can submit only one eligible application per year, so you need to choose between the March deadline or the September deadline. And what we've seen in 24 and 25 is that we have an almost equal number of proposals submitted to those two deadlines. So yeah, there's no playing regarding which deadline to choose. We also usually get a bit more money, a bit of additional funding from the Scientific Council that we use to equalize the success rate between the two deadlines. So you should just choose whatever deadline suits you best. Under Horizon Europe, the Scientific Council decided that there should be a maximum of 3 proof of concept grants if you hold a starting consolidator or advanced grant, but also that these proof of concept projects can run in parallel, both with the main grant and also if you are successful in 2 or 3 applications, they can actually be overlapping. For synergy grantees, for each synergy project, a maximum of 6 POC grants can be awarded. And what we are asking for synergy PIs is that they have the consent of their fellow synergy PIs in the project to submit an application. It's not something that they need to provide to us, but they just need to have it available in case somebody would ask for it. What is important to mention is that the host institution for your proof of concept grant can be different from the main grants, and we usually have 10-15% of our grantees who would choose another host institution. Can be an SME, can be any institution, can be an industry partner, as long as it makes sense for where you want to the main part of the work. You are also allowed to have additional beneficiaries as for your main grant, and we also keep the same rules regarding portability of the proof of concept grant. So it means in case you're moving institution, you can bring your proof of concept grant with you. And then for the proposal itself, it's a sort of pretty simple 10-page proposal. Against these 10 pages, we do not count the abstract, we do not count the references, we don't count the risk mitigation template, and we give you up to 3 pages to explain the breakthrough innovation potential of your idea. We give you 6 pages to explain the approach and methodology, and then 1 page to explain your strategic lead and project management as the PI. As for the main grant applications, you know our online administrative form. It's very similar to that, so it's still around 15 pages that needs to be filled in for you to be able to actually submit your proposal. But that's just this one part B. And then we also ask a signed host institution support letter. This is what you also know as from your main grant. And then what is different is that if you already have established collaborations with industry partners, groups of end users, policymakers, whatever makes sense for your POC project, you can provide and document these collaborations in letters of support or letters of intent. And I've included here also a link to a small ERC class video that we have on YouTube. Then on the next 3 slides, I have included the evaluation questions that our POC evaluators are asked to assess for each proposal. And we have actually mirrored and built the proposal template so that the template mirrors the evaluation questions, and so that the evaluators can easily find the information they're looking for. And I therefore invite you to read the questions very carefully. I will not read them out. You find them in the ERC work program. We also have them in the information for applicants document, and just to make sure that you cover all your questions in the right sections of your proposal. But this template is made available via the call page in the Funding and Tenders portal. Once the call will be published, the submission link will be there. And once you create your draft proposal, as you've done for your main grant, you will find the downloadable templates there. And I want to mention, since we have the delay in opening the 26 call, that there has been no changes to the template as compared to 25. So we will include this information in the email that we're sending out so that you can already, those who want, they can start working in the template. So this is the second set of questions on the approach and methodology that are asked to the evaluators. So it's about the proposed activities, whether they're appropriate and effective to explore the pathway from groundbreaking research towards innovation. So these informations go into sections 1B, 1 and 2, and then on the time scale and resources as a separate section 1B, 3. And then the final section 1C is for you, this one page, to explain your involvement in the project, how you envision to take the strategic lead and the project management. And I think also Robert will come back to this, but this goes, all of this information goes into section 1C. And then just this one slide to explain how our evaluation procedure for proof of concept is different from the main grants. We run a single step evaluation procedure. We usually implement the whole cycle in around 100 days from the time of the submission cutoff to the time where we can send out the final results to you, to all applicants via the portal. And for each proposal, there is a remote evaluation by 5 independent experts in technology transfer and social innovation. And they assign to each evaluation element one A, B, and C, a comment, a written comment, and a mark. And they can choose between 2 pass marks, so either very good or good, or a fail mark. So we do not have any panel meeting discussions. We base the final ranking only on these individual marks given by the experts. And to be ranked, a proposal has to pass all evaluation elements, which means passing equals having obtained a pass mark by the majority of experts, so minimum a good score by 3 out of 5 experts. That's the lowest pass mark. And then the rank list is established by the marks given by experts to evaluation elements 1, 2, and 3, where we give the highest weight to the breakthrough innovation potential, followed by approach and methodology, and then finally the PI, strategic lead and project management. And then in this established rank list, we know the budget we have available for the evaluation, and within this budget we main list the projects that are in this ranking, and then we usually create a shorter or longer reserve list, depending on whether we are expecting additional funding to the call, or in case there is granting failure among those that are invited on the main list. And I have a few tips of applicants, but I'm sure this will be covered in the second half of this webinar, but just a few points. So I think it's important as a PI that you show the evaluators that you are intended to be involved in the project and take the lead and be the primary project manager. I think it's very welcomed by our evaluators. Usually, if you state a time commitment in this section, they are usually quite positive about this. A second point is for you to be aware about your competitors and describe the competitive landscape for the product or the service that you are proposing. So you have to explain, of course, the novelty in your specific idea or application, and also explain how it's different from other solutions. You have to think about who will be your end users of the final product or service, who will benefit from your innovation once it's fully developed. We know you will most probably not with the POP funding get there fully, but once you get there, who will benefit from it? So in case you are proposing a commercially valuable innovation idea, it's very important that you describe your market in details, also the value of the market. And in case of a socially valuable proposition, what will be the expected impact of your project idea once it's fully developed? In case you are presenting an idea for a database or an application development, how will this be envisioned to be maintained beyond the project period? So you need to think about additional funding and investment which will be needed, and how you will intend to pursue this and through which channels. All of this to be put there. Then I want to mention that for those grantees, because it is a very sort of competitive call, and even though you get high marks from all evaluators, you may not end up on the funded list. So as of 2023, the Scientific Council decided to award a seal of excellence to proposals, POC proposals that have received a pass mark in all 3 evaluation elements, but cannot be funded due to lack of budget. And this award is provided as a separate document to reserve and below budget applicants when they receive the evaluation outcome in the F&T portal. So together with their reserve list or rejection letter, there will be guidance from RTD to applicants as of to where they can search for funding of their project from other sources, and their specific Seal of Excellence homepage that I've included here, the link. Where are we with the time, Antonino? Do we have time for some statistics?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. You still have 5 minutes. Yeah.
Because I included the results of our 2024 call, because the 25 call is still running. We are finalizing in these days the results of the deadline 2 evaluation of the 2025 call. But this is an overview of what we received in 2024 and the results of the evaluations. So this first summary slide gives you the number of submitted and evaluated proposals by domain, including for synergy. And I also here included the number of eligible grantees. So you can see that in 2024, we had more than 7,000 eligible grantees who could apply for a proof of concept grant. And in the physical sciences and engineering domain, where we had more than 3,000 eligible PIs, 310 submitted a POC proposal, and 136 of these were selected for funding. You see also in the last column the success rate, and you see that the success rate for PE was 44% last year, which was the highest among the 3-4 domains. PIs in the life sciences domain were slightly more active, in that 11% of those who were eligible decided to submit a POC applications, and their success rate is at the average 35% of the core. So PIs who were either holding a grant awarded by social sciences and humanities panels or the synergy panels were the least active in applying for a POC grant. Although for synergy, if we count by projects, we are actually almost at 19%. So we've seen over the last 2-3 years that the appetite for POC projects is also increasing among synergy grant holders. The success rate for social sciences and humanities grantees remain at about half of the overall call success rate. And this is unfortunately a picture that we keep seeing in all POC evaluations. And one explanation is that, as I mentioned, it's a highly competitive call, and we've seen a build-up of high-quality proposals over Horizon Europe, which is also one of the reasons that we're doubling the budget next year. And in this strong competition, some social sciences and humanity POC proposals, they fall out of the main list because it takes a very positive evaluation from all 5 reviewers to make it to the main list. But Robert can testify to the fact that in every year we have an initial full-day online meeting with all our POC evaluators and the POC panel, in 24 and 25 were more than 100 experts, and we always dedicate a full session or even several sections for the experts to consider and discuss how to evaluate POC proposals from social sciences and humanities. So this remains a focus point, and we keep on doing these briefings, these discussions to help improve this situation. And in this slide, you see the funded proposals across the 2 deadlines by panel of original grant. In P, we usually have very few proposals from the mathematics P1 panel and the universe sciences panel P9. But we have many proposals and projects that are funded out of the P5, P7, and P8 panel, including those that fall under the new P11 panel, which is advanced material science. So P5 is synthetic chemistry, P7 systems and communications engineering, and P8 is products and processes engineering. And then in the life sciences, usually, and also in 2024, our LS7 grantees took a lot of POC grants together with LS4. So there is a general trend that we fund many POC projects in health and medical biotech in the life sciences, but also in applied biotechnology, LS9, we usually do fund quite many POCs. In social sciences and humanities, we have funded most projects within SH4 in 2024. This is cognitive science, psychology, and linguistics, and also a few in SH2, which is institutions, governance, and law. And then among the 8 funded synergy projects in 2024, they go across all domains, of course. So we have one on stroke recovery. We have one on proteomics methods for taxonomic identification of very small organic samples. We had an early warning system for surveillance of cyber or physical attacks on water distribution systems. And then we also had, just to mention a few, one of intuitive control of bionic limb prosthesis. So this is the second summary slide of the call results 2024. It gives you the fraction of submitted and funded proposals per domain to the left and by call of the original ERC grant to the right. And the dotted outer rings of these 2 donuts represents the number of submissions, and the inner rings the number of funded proposals. And as I already have spoken about the domain distribution, I invite you to focus on the right figure, where you see the call distribution. You see that the younger cohorts of starting and consolidated grantees are very active in applying for proof of concept grants, and also that they are very successful in the evaluations. This is usually true for all of our evaluations. And in 2024, out of the 245 awarded grants in total, 188 went to starters and consolidators. Then 49 grants were awarded to advanced grantees and 8 to synergy, as previously stated. I should mention here that we also have fewer advanced grantees in general. And in the first deadline of 2025, I can mention that the advanced grantees had a higher success rate than consolidator and starters. So it changes a bit over the year. If we zoom in on the call years of the original main grants, you see that we had grantees that were funded back under the 2015 and 16 work programs in all grant types, except for synergy. That was reintroduced in 2013 in Horizon 2020. We had a first pilot in 2012-13. These were no longer eligible to apply, of course, so we have now synergy grantees from 18 that applies and onwards that applies for proof of concept. And since this is, of course, a picture of the funded proposals, but it pretty much looks the same if you look at the submitted proposals. distribution. So you see that ERC grantees are a little bit less active in applying for a POC grant in the first 1 and 2 years of implementation of their main grant, but then that the distribution of funded proposals over years 3 to 7 into the project implementation is sort of more or less equal or flat in these graphs. Then I have a few country statistics. First, the funded proposals by host institution country. And in 2024, the grantees based in UK were awarded 30 POC grants across the 2 deadlines. Same as the PIs based in the Netherlands, who actually did very well in 2024. And for the other sort of large countries, Germany together with Italy, Spain, and France are all between 20 and 28 grants, followed by Israel at 19, Belgium at 16, and Denmark at 11 grants. We also have Turkey and Portugal here. They each took 2 grants, and then we have Lithuania, Hungary, Cyprus, Luxembourg, Czech Republic, Poland, and Slovenia, where 1 grantee had a POC grant in 24. And this is the success rate in 2024 by host institution country. We have 1 single PI from Lithuania who was funded, but Ireland had very good success rate, more than 50% with their applications last year. We have Hungary, where 1 out of 2 applications were funded. Netherlands is at an impressive 47% success rate, followed by Finland, Denmark, Italy, and Israel. And UK last year was more or less at the average of 35.3% for the call. And then the countries to the right of UK were a bit less successful than the call average. And then I had a look at the funded proposals, funded projects, for all our calls back from 2011 when the POC grant scheme was launched until 2024. So this is a project database that we have for all the signed grants, and you see that UK is in the lead, altogether 265 proof of concept grants out of 2,154 awarded. And this is even when you were not eligible to apply in the first years of Horizon Europe. And then we look at the funded projects. You see an increase going from FP7 over Horizon 2020. Of course, there's then a gap between 2020 and 2024. But you see that you have ERC grantees of 31 different nationalities who obtained a proof of concept grant over the years, and 24.6% of these were female grantees, which is actually higher than average for proof of concept grants. We are now in the second deadline of 2025. We are above 30% of female applicants, but this is the first time in a proof of concept call that we are above 30% female applicants. Then I don't know if you see the details here. The legend is very small, but this basically give you the POC projects broken down by domain of the original grant. So you see that for the UK POCs, more than 60% were awarded to our PIs coming out of the physical sciences and engineering panels, a little more than 20% out of the life sciences panel, 17% out of the social sciences and humanities panels, and then 1.5 out of synergy. This is unspecified here on this graph. I couldn't change that. But I think what's interesting is these 44% in the synthetic chemistry panel P5, and then followed by P4 physical and analytical chemistry, and then P8 products and processes engineering, P7 systems and communication engineering. So you have you have, as a first life sciences panel, you have 15 projects originating from LS7. And then from SH, you have institutions, governance, and law, 16 projects. And then human mind and its complexity, SH4, with 12 or 13 projects. So, and I think this will be my last slide. I also have added in my presentation, which will be shared by Antonino after the event, some links to our recent results, and also where you can go look for additional support to develop your POC application. And also, if you're already a POC grant holder, I will mention the EIC Tech to Market trainings, which is something that we also advertise by sending out targeted emails to all eligible grantees, so that this can help them prepare their EIC transition application. But this is just the final slide with the call calendar for 2026. And even though our call opening will be delayed, we will maintain the 2 submission cutoffs, the first one on the 17th of March and the second one on 17th of September. And I think with this, I will finish my presentation.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lina, very much for the very clear and comprehensive presentation. And it's super useful to have this information right now as we're rebuilding knowledge in the community. And we hope to very quickly evolve into a situation where more and more people will be eligible now as we increase the quantity of life grants in the country. So now it's time to introduce my dear colleague, Claire Griffin from the UK National Contact Point for the EIC. She will advise us on how to apply for the EIC transition funding based on the results of the ERC proof of concept. Claire, thank you for being with us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm just sharing my presentation now. Can you verbally confirm you can see it and I'm in presentation mode?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're good to go.
As Nino has said, my name is Claire Griffin. I'm the UK's national contact point for EIC and EIE. What does that mean in context what we've already heard this morning? We've heard a lot of information about the ERC, that's in Pillar 1. EIC and EIE sit within Pillar 3, Innovative Europe. Why does Pillar 3 exist? Europe has a really solid research and industrial base, yet we could do better at strengthening the use of scientific excellence and industrial prowess to accelerate innovation and turn these innovative SMEs into technology giants. So through the EIC, through Pillar 3, there's a focus on supporting the development of disruptive and market-creating innovations and on enhancing European innovation ecosystems. In Pillar 3, we have 3 main calls. We have the EIC, the EIE, and the EIT. Today, I'm only going to talk about the EIC, but the EIC focuses on connecting regional and national innovation actors, and the EIT brings together key actors in research, education, and business together around a common goal for nurturing innovation. There are also shortcuts from EIE and EIT into EIC, and Nino and I have a colleague, Teresa, who's the NCP for EIC. So the budget for Horizon Europe for EIC is 10.6 billion. I will show you how that breaks down as we proceed through my presentation. However, the 6 strategic goals for the EIC are to be an investor of choice for those with visionary ideas, to crowd in 30 to 50 billion euros of investment into European deep tech, to pull through high-risk technologies in critical areas for society and open strategic autonomy, to increase the number of European unicorns and scale-ups, to catalyse innovation impacts from European public research and innovation, and to achieve operational excellence. So we've already heard from Lina today on point 5, but you will notice that research is the 5th strategic goal of the EIC. It's not the main goal of the EIC. So what is deep tech? Just to ensure we're all on the same page, deep tech is technology that is based on cutting-edge scientific advances and discoveries. It is characterized by the need to stay at the technological forefront by constant interaction with new ideas and results from the lab. In an EIC context, it is not high tech, which refers to R&D intensity. Excuse me. And a unicorn is a private company that is valued at over 1 billion. What has the EIC achieved? We now have an EIC impact report from 2021, 2023 and 2025. So this is telling you what the EIC is incredibly proud of having achieved, but it's also giving you averages, what it has achieved, and it's those averages that I would encourage you to read the EIC impact reports, and the average gives you an indication of where you need to pitch your application to the EIC, be that Pathfinder, Transition or one of the other calls. Excuse me. If you look at the graphic in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see that to date, there have been over 1,300 unique innovations from both Pathfinder and Transition, but 75% of those have been targeting emerging markets. The main calls within the EIC, if we start in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see our EIC Pathfinder. New for 2026, we have EIC Advanced Innovation Challenges. We then have Transition, Pre-Accelerator, Accelerator, EIC STEP and EIC Business Acceleration Services, leading to the endpoint of the unicorn that we're looking for. I will tell you that the EIC work programme changes on an annual basis, so please pay attention to the work programme for 2026. It may be slightly different from what you're familiar with already. I don't particularly want you to look at the text on this call. I would like you to focus on the colours. We know that there's 10 billion budget for EIC in Horizon Europe. That translates to 1.4 billion in 2026. It is then split through a number of different calls, and the grey in particular is Transition. So there is 100 million for Transition applications in 2026. What is the Transition? It is essentially targeting innovation activities that go beyond the experimental proof of principle in the laboratory. So proof of principle in the EIC context would be TRL3. And Transition also supports the maturation and validation of novel technologies from the lab to the relevant application environments. You can see from the diagram below, Transition is listed in both relation to the TRL and BRL. So you do need to remember that when you're moving along the technology readiness levels, you also need to be moving along the business readiness levels. So if you have identified an EU-funded project with promising commercial potential, it could be ERC proof of concept, but not only limited to. Do you have a novel technology that you have proven the concept? Have you conducted early market and competition explorations? And do you have a motivated and diverse team to take forward to the next steps? The starting point in this project is proof of concept. So that is TRL3 or TRL4. The head of EIC Transition has said TRL4 is better than TRL3. So I would indicate that I think you should consider that in your application. And the endpoint is a functional version of the technology tested or demonstrated in a relevant environment. So that is TRL 5 to 6, supported by a sound, implementable commercialization strategy. Application to Transition is wider than only ERC POC. You may be familiar with EIC Pathfinder or indeed Horizon 2020 FET. If you are applying on the basis of ERC proof of concept, only one proposal per eligible originating ERC proof of concept can apply. You can have had funding from research infrastructures, that is new in 2026. You can also have had funding in Pillar 2 in Horizon Europe. There's a slight typo on the next line. I will fix that before the slides are shared. So that is joint undertakings, except for financial support to third parties. EDF, of course, is the European Defence Fund. If you are interested in what technologies are eligible, please refer to the Innovation Radar. There are a large list of projects whose technologies are eligible to apply. Not eligible are ERA-nets, that's a change from previous years, co-funded partnerships and EIT kicks. So some of this I've already said, and I will repeat some of it again as I go through my presentation. The minimum eligibility criteria is proof of concept, TRL 3. TRL 4 is preferred. You can apply within 18 months from the start of your previous project. This is a change from 2025 when it was 12 months, but ERC, POC, you can have started your project 6 months. The deadline in 2026 is the 16th of September, 1700 hours Central European time. Of course, that is 1600 hours in UK time. The grant in 2026 is a hard limit of 2.5 million. Who can apply? It is only open to previously funded projects. You have to have validated your tech in a lab. You have to have performed early market competition collaborations, and your team has to be motivated for commercialization. It is a mono-beneficiary or a very small consortia of up to 5. There are really specific rules. Please pay careful attention to that. We have seen some of this information already from Lena this morning. The success rate in 2025 is estimated to be around 7%. Around 40 projects will be funded. We know this because we have 100 million and each project has a hard limit of 2.5 million. I have also highlighted here the really large number of ineligible applications that Transition gets on an annual basis. Please make sure your application is eligible. If you have any queries, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I would absolutely hate for you to spend time on an application that is deemed ineligible because it's simply not forwarded for evaluation. We also have seen some of these figures from Lena. These are presented in a slightly different way. Again, I think the text on the right-hand side will be too small for you to see, so I will explain the colours. For the first 4 years of EIC Transition, there's been 183 projects. A third of those are for SME beneficiaries. 50% of those, as we have heard, have been from ERC Proof of Concept. 35% have been from Pathfinder or its predecessor, Future and Enabling Technologies. And over 50% of the funded projects have been in the medical and health biotech. So the health biotech is the violet colour on the right-hand side or dark blue, depending on your screen's resolution. And then the light grey at the bottom is medical technology. The orange, the peach, which is the next largest colour on the pie chart, is quantum, advanced computing and semiconductors. So some of this I have repeated. Transition does have new features in 2026. The deadline, of course, changes every year. We have the 16th of September this year. Changes every year, but we have autumnal deadlines in Transition. There are no challenges in Transition in 2026. We have a hard limit of 2.5 million. A project in duration of 2 to 3 years will be deemed appropriate. You have to have done 18 months from the start of your previous project. This is a new time span for 2026. But if you're applying on the basis of an ERC proof of concept, the start date of that project must be more than 6 months before the deadline of Transition. So that is 6 months before September. You have to apply within 24 months of the end of your previous project. Your composition, maximum 5, is the number of partners well justified and are the main partners responsible who will be bringing the technology to market involved in the research. Also, what is being assessed is the operational capacity to execute this project well. New in 2026 is the business acceleration services. Coaching is compulsory, and something else Lena has mentioned and I would absolutely encourage you to look at is the Tech to Market programme. It is only open to those who have been awarded funding, but it is useful to look at it in advance so you can say in your application, we will do this. I've already said this as well, but it is important. So ERC proof of concept cannot submit more than 1 project. You can participate and apply if you weren't part of the initial consortium, but you need to include in your proposal a commitment letter from the relevant owners of the eligible results. And you need to include confirmation from the commitment of the owner that you have access to the IPR for the duration of the project and for future commercialization. You can see here the link to the Innovation Radar, where you can see the full list of technologies that are eligible to apply. What do these deals look like? We know that joint ventures are typically successful. Not yet a plan is not successful. We know spin-offs are successful. Direct exploitation and licensing deals all have been successful in the past using technologies that have been funded by eligible projects. So what lessons have been learned in transition from 21 to 2025 at a really high level? You need to know the market you plan to enter, you need to know the competition you will face, and you need to know the EU problem that you are solving. So there's a need for a higher impact and commercialization potential. You need to identify a promising market, not a specific small market with limited potential. So your business model and market analysis must be included. TRL 4 is preferred. TRL 5 or 6 is too high. There have been a number of IPR issues, so intellectual property rights. The commitment needs to be solid. What does a strong proposal look like? A great innovation. 70% are hitting this with a great innovation. A competent team is also 70%. Understanding and knowledge of the market and competition, 56%. Involvement of users and early customers, 26%. And then, of course, we have the timing being right and the incipient business model. The major weaknesses of the no-go proposals, 74% of the applications that were told no thank you had a lack of understanding of the market and competition. And then the next highest is the team in the consortium or the exploitation partner was not right. So know the market, know the competition, and know the problem that you're solving. I have said this already, but again, it bears repeating. Technology readiness levels and business readiness levels are linked. You need to present the initial elements of your business plan and model. So this includes the value proposition, the competition, your customers' needs, etc. Applicants are expected to present business assumptions and hypotheses with your further TRL to be validated during the project. So this is a little bit of repetition again. You need to include activities to increase your market and business readiness, and your business assumptions and your hypothesis has to be equal to the TRL of the proposal and has to be verified during the project. What is expected in EIC transition? You're looking at the impact. Can you quantify the scale of the problem? What value? What is the USP, the unique proposition that you're presenting? Why can you win? What's your competitive edge? What's your IP? How is it sustainable? What is your execution and delivery model? And who will lead the commercialization aspect of this? So that's a step beyond the research. Who will lead the commercialization? The transition evaluation process. It is part of Horizon Europe, so we have the 3 traditional Horizon Europe criteria of excellence, impact, and quality and implementation. But there are 3 experts in a remote phase. The final score is the sum of the individual scores, and then there is different evaluation criteria and a jury interview in transition as well. So for excellence, we're looking at technological breakthrough. Does the technology have a high degree of novelty and performance compared to other technologies? Are the objectives credible and feasible? What are the KPIs for the planned business development? And is the timing right for this proposal? So from a transition impact, how credible are the impacts? Are they substantial? Are they focusing on one or several sectors? Are you setting new standards? What are the economic and societal benefits? Does it have scale-up potential? Remember the unicorns that we talked about in earlier slides? And is the proposed innovation expected to generate other positive impacts? Strategic autonomy, employment, societal and environmental. What's your investment readiness and go-to-market strategy? What's your time to market? What's your revenue model? Then when we're looking at quality and efficiency of the implementation, does the project team have high quality capabilities and motivation to move towards the market? What's your operational capacity? Are there KPIs and milestones present? Have the risks been addressed? And what's your mitigation plan to achieve the project objectives? And how appropriate and effective are the allocation of resources? This is a slide taken directly from the head of EIC Transition, and they have stated that capability is linked to capacity from the prospect that both relate to the team's ability to achieve the goal. Both need to be successful. One influences the other. The capacity limits the capability, and for transition, you are expected to progress at intensity and scale. So you must have stable and sufficient resources to successfully implement the projects. There is a jury interview. You need to do some due diligence in advance. This is the link to the current jury members. The evaluation criteria are different from the in between the remote and jury phase. This criteria is available in the work plan. You can take 5 of your team to the interview. You are expected to demonstrate in the interview how you work together as a team. Typically, you have a 10-minute pitch and 35 minutes for questions. You will be interrupted mid-word, never mind mid-sentence, so you need to have timed this perfectly. And you can expect 18 to 25 questions on any subject. I'd like to talk a little bit about bid writers and consultants now. The EIC board has published observations on the use of consultants for EIC applications. You are free to seek consultancy services, but success is possible without them. The EIC board has done a study, and somewhat unhelpfully, it has been established that 50% of successes use bid writers and 50% don't. But the board does highlight main support options such as national contact points, university tech transfer offices, insight from previous applicants, and of course business acceleration services and the Enterprise Europe network, which in the UK is known as Innovate UK Business Growth. They have also published a code of conduct which lists ethical standards, and you should check that your bid writer, your consultant, adheres to these ethical standards. Please read the small print. And because I'm very keen on you reading the small print, I'm starting my next slide with please read the small print. Be aware of contract considerations, be cautious of exclusivity rights, IP rights, and the nature of these consultancy contracts. Assess their capabilities, compare multiple offers, and consider sector-specific expertise. Please be aware of the success rates. We know in 2025 the success rate was about 7%. We know that there will be about 40 projects funded in 2026, but above all, applicants must remain engaged and responsible for your applications. I know I'm slightly over time, but I would also like to highlight to you the business acceleration services. The view behind the business acceleration services is the financial support. Your grant is the beginning of your journey. And there is a variety of mechanisms to help bring your innovation to the market and grow your business. Some of these are compulsory and all of them are worth considering. Here is the hyperlink to the business acceleration services. In 2026, coaching is one of the compulsory mandatory areas of business acceleration services for transition. So you also have the opportunity to apply for a booster grant, and you then have the opportunity at the end of your transition to apply to EIC Accelerator if that is where you want. That is my final slide, Antonino. So thank you very much for your time. I will end my slideshow and stop sharing.
Wow, thank you very much, Claire. That was super informative. We are really blessed to have national contact point colleagues so knowledgeable in their own area. I suggest we shorten a little bit our comfort break and we reconvene in 6 minutes. That is 11:15 to hear from our 2 testimonials. Thank you very much for your attention. See you in a few minutes. How about now? Thank you for your time, Andrea. Feel free to go already in presentation mode so we can make it from start. And
can you hear me? Very good.
can I ask my colleagues to confirm whether you can still hear me? Yeah, okay. My headset is playing up, but okay, I'll do without. Okay, welcome back everyone to our ERC Proof of Concept grant webinar delivered to you by the UK National Counterpoint for European Research Council. Just to remind you all, this session is being recorded and the recording will be available on the UKNI YouTube channel immediately after this webinar. It's my great pleasure now to introduce Andrea Di Falco, who is Professor of Nanophotonics at the School of Physics and Astronomy at the University of St. Andrews. In 2019, he was awarded an ERC consolidated grant to develop a biophotonics application of optically trapped photonic membranes, and we look forward to hearing more about this. He is currently holding a proof of concept based on the results of that ERC consolidated grant. And Professor Di Falco, thank you very much for your time, and the floor is yours now.
Thank you very much, Antonino. And thank you again for inviting me to be here and tell you a little bit more about my experience in applying to and then securing this proof of concept grant, the HASCARD, as it was called. I'd say that I can anticipate a lot of the fun coming from applying for this grant is about identifying the best acronym. And it's then, a good day goes away thinking, if not two, about that. But here we are. So thank you again for saying where I'm from. I'm based at the University of St. Andrews since 2006. And there I lead the group called Synthetic Optics Group. What we do is develop technological platforms. So we, for example, traditionally come from silicon photonics technologies. So we've been using this for a variety of different fundamental physics and applied translation research, for example, on chaotic resonators for diverse application, broadband energy harvesting, or even exploring chaotic dynamics of the underpins the creation of log waves down to cryptography applications. We are comfortable using 3-5 lasers, for example, to track the behavior of cells in vivo by having the cells eating these lasers and then moving them around. We've been working with bottom-up approaches that, for example, use silica aerogel to exploit their very strong optothermal nonlinearity, so their response to very strong, intense fields and the heat that locally is generated. But I could say that one of the core activities in my group is that to develop metamaterials. So this one, the applications are extremely wide again. It's an underpinning technology. Today, what I'll be focusing mostly is on holographic metasurfaces. The reason why I've shown this overview of some of the activities in the group is to understand how very quickly we go in my group from talking about biophotonics, but then we can pivot towards augmented reality or cryptography or any other application that we are interested in. So there is a natural diversity of interest that share, though, the same technological platforms. So what are metamaterials then? I imagine that the audience is fairly diverse there. So I'll have an executive definition of what is a holographic metasurface, which is in fact, something that happens on a plane and is structured in a very, very small scale. So we're talking about hundreds of nanometers typically. And it looks a little bit like this. It's a periodic fashion. It's a periodic distribution of very small features on a plane. We can be a little bit more rigorous in that and call what the UK metamaterial networks that I belong to have spent quite a lot of time to define, so which are metamaterials, which are three-dimensional structure, whose response or function is due to the collective effort of these individual structures that we call metaatoms, which achieve functions that are not typically possible with natural materials or in general when we use only one material. So a metasurface is a 2-dimensional version of this artificial element. But anyway, it's something that controls point to point what light does, how light scatters. And this gives us control over what light does after interacting with the metamaterial. So it's a very versatile technological platform that we've used over the years for a variety of applications. One of the most striking applications of this platform is that of creating computer-generated holograms. This is something that many of us are familiar with. That date back to Gabo that invented the analog holography, but nowadays it's a very logical. It's very simple object to create. You start from a synthetic image, the one that you want to create. You need to know what is the optical source that you're going to use to create this image, and you calculate with a computer a hologram, which is a phase distribution. This distribution of phase is the one that light needs to have in order to generate the image. So in other words, after the computer has given you a distribution of phase in space that needs to be obtained, if you use the light that you have designed it for, you obtain on a screen the hologram without ever the hologram needing to be there. Okay, so this is different from a display. You need an optical source, you need a physical distribution, something that defaces the light, the metasurface, and you obtain an image at the end. There are many ways to do this. We are all familiar with what a laser pointer is able to do. For example, create any little object. They are diffractive optics element, and they do exactly what a metasurface does. Metasurfaces have the advantage to be deeply sub-wavelength, so they're much, much smaller than the wavelength. So, and this means that the wavelength, and they can be made flat. So, which means that now we have a very powerful method to obtain images by creating by creating these metasurfaces. They're also allowed to have redundancy of information, multiplexing. That means that we can encode the information on different degrees of freedom that we have with light. We can play with polarization, we can play with the angle of incidence, the wavelength, the color. all these could be dimensions into which we encode the information, which means we have different images for different colors, different images for different direction of incidence of the light, of polarization, etc. So the challenge then is to map this distribution of phase, which has these color-coded blocks here, into a physical element. This is what metasurfaces are great at. And we can do it in many different ways. These are now the pixels of our image. We can make them physically coming from using different resources. So we can have small resonators, imagine like little tuning forks that responds to light with a frequency that depends specifically on point to point. They can be engineered. Or they can be made like guided mode. So these are waveguides, small waveguides that controls how fast the light goes from one point to the next. If we make them of different thickness, we can have now a distribution of points where point by point, the phasing, so the time that it takes for light to go from one point to the next is different. So this gives us the control. Or we can do that, for example, by orienting small antennas. All these methods result in one simple thing, which is the creation of a lookup table, which means that for a desired phase, the one that was coming from the computer-generated hologram design, I know physically what type of geometry to produce. So what I've created now is an object which point by point gives me the phasing that I desire in order to create the image that I want. We've used this very successful in my group since 2010. We started working on this type of geometries. The things that we've added, the flavor that we've added, if you want, in my group is that we made them conformable. So we can make them flexible, conformable, and we can add another degree of encoding information, which is the distortion of this flexible films. So the way in which we use them typically is that we can use them either in reflection or in transmission. In this case, for example, we have them in reflection, light comes in, and then impingence of the metasurface. And on reflection, we put a screen to observe the image that we have encoded into the small meta-atoms here. Since they're flexible and conformable, we can put them on top of any surface. For example, the glasses, which is relevant to what we'll be talking later. These were early exercise in 2017, early realization. We have gone a little bit farther from there. But this body of work is what inspired in 2018 the writing and then application for an ERC consolidator grant, which was then awarded in 2019. The core idea of this one is to take all this versatility, all this ability to control light, make it interact with the environment around, with other matter, for example, to create cancer marker sensors, or to create sensors that can be put on top of fibers, or in general to create images. Well, the idea was to translate all these capabilities into the confined space of a microfluidic chip, so that then we could make it interact effectively with specimens like living cells or DNA, and amplify, improve the way with which we can interact with the specimens of interest, all by exploiting the potential and the flexibilities of these membranes. I don't have time now to go in details about the in and out of this project. This is not the spirit, but the bottom line is that we created a system with which we could manipulate these membranes in real time, so using holographic optical tweezers. Yeah, this is an example of how the small membranes can be moved around as seen by a microscope objective in real time. We did obtain a variety of results, so just to highlight a couple, just to show how this then gave rise to the Asgard project later. So we were able to design flat lenses that are able to have a very high numerical aperture. So this, for example, made of ceramic, and this then a project that then gave rise to a collaboration with the DSTL here in the UK that helped us understanding how we can use these lenses for extreme environment. So another example of translation of a technology coming from the ERC that then found a funding route through application in defense. We were able to demonstrate the core ambition of our grant, which was the interaction with a manipulated metasurface with lasers. This is one example that can be seen in this paper. But in the process, we had to develop a lot of capabilities, and this is what then led us to the Asgard. In particular, along with our ability to conform them and make them interact with cells, for example, or create imaging objects, we were able to give them the ability to sense the environment. So now, for example, here what we had is we make holograms that were able to change the image depending on the refractive index of the liquid in which they were immersed. Or we were able to create holograms just with once by texturing polymers in transmission with very, very high quality. All these tools were developed in the pursuit of our core aim, which was the interaction with biological specimens. But through this research, we were able then to understand that there were shooting off in directions that were not directly aligned to the core of the project, but they were still useful pursuing. And from this, we imagined a grant, a translation grant, which is called ASGARD. And again, here you can try and find how the acronym came around, but these are hazard sensors based on holographic metasurfaces for near-eye augmented reality displays. It's a bit of a mouthful. Basically, making augmented reality glasses that have an element of sensing around. It can be helpful in some specific application. Before I go in details here of how we ended up writing, I would like to point back to what we heard about this morning, which is how do we set out to write a proof of concept grant? Now, we have already been explained how they are different, but it's from the point of view of the writer, we do need to change a little bit our mindset. It's not just a matter of following the rules, but it's a matter of putting a different hat on. So when we write, we are in the UK, so and UKRI is a very clear example of how to differentiate the approach. So when we write, for example, an ERC standard grant, this is where I come from, the community in physics and astronomy. Here, what we are used to do is to structure our argument in vision and approach, the ability to deliver, so the track record, who we are, and then we need to look at responsible research and innovation, the resources that are granted, and other features. So what matters is, as you know, the high quality and high priority of the research. The relevance to the portfolio is important, and to the UK community. The impact risk management, it needs to make sense for the UK to invest our taxpayers' money. This is different from when we write a fellowship, like for example an ERC or a future leader fellowship. Here this is about attracting and retaining talents. We want to foster, future leaders. Often, especially at the starting level and future leadership fellowship. This is about a compelling idea, development of the individual and personal career development. And this is different from a proof of concept, which could be a UKRI or the ERC, which is what we're talking about here, which is designed to increase the TRL of a technology. Okay, so the thing that changes here is the language that we use. We don't think anymore in terms of achieving a well-argumented goal that has a background rooted in a scientific endeavor. This is about sprints, planning, execution. This is a language that can be acquired and should be honed specifically for the aim of writing this grant. So this is a logical problem, solution, and impact that it generates. Again, I don't want to restate what has already been explained very well, better than this. But it's not just a matter of filling different fields in a form. It's about adopting a different mentality and a different language. That's the message that I wanted to pass. So we've already been explained what are the various sections. I don't want to repeat it. I've told you a little bit about the origin. I want to tell you how I ended up then selecting the need, the solution, the value proposition for this idea, and then touch a little bit on what we've done in terms of IP and strategy. So the first thing, as we start, is the most difficult, actually, not the easiest, which is to pitch the project properly. And the reason why this is a key importance is because, as we'll see later, very likely, the reviewers do not necessarily come from your own discipline. They are experts, but they're not experts in your own specific field. And so the abstract, the summary, the lay summary, call it as you like it, it needs to be free of jargon. It needs to make sense to a lay audience with a technical knowledge, but not necessarily yours. One thing that I've learned, I've been told, and I've tried to make mine, and when I try to write these grants, is that it is important to tell a story. And one can tell, for example, storytelling. This is typical of movies. So you want to start from setting the background, define the problem, action, solution, result. Now, in the case of our grant, just to be specific as to how I ended up writing this for Asgard, we started by setting out what augmented reality is, Then we went on and exploring briefly what are the current solutions, and then introduce what our project does. So not yet the solution, but what do we actually do? Then I moved on into the overcoming common challenges, and eventually I could set out the output. I'm not copying here all my abstract, but they are publicly available. So if you're interested, I invite you to go and have a look and then compare the way in which I try to write the grant into this. This is not too formulaic. This is a natural way of writing, and there are many other ways in which you can write a compelling abstract. But I invite you to spend a lot of time thinking about that, because that's the first thing that will be seen, will be read, and will be digested. On to now a little bit more of details as to what Asgard does and how does it set out to do it, and how I ended up doing it. So the background is that of augmented reality. We go from one extreme, just from virtual reality, where you have a mask that only projects virtual images, digital images, to the extreme where we have augmented reality, which is a place where you see the world through the real world, but superimposed you see a virtual image. And there are all mixed reality where, for example, you have a camera that acquires the real world and then superimposes a digital image. This is what commercial solutions are available nowadays. There is a problem with this solution. So the need is that this cannot be, for example, very well used in everyday glasses. So when we wear our own glasses, we cannot easily use those, but we need specialized equipment. It is also true that there are opportunities that can be taken by, for example, to use what meta surfaces can do in order to simplify the experience and enable access that is so far inhibited to people that do not have special needs, for example, in terms of auditory impaired users that can benefit of additional technologies. So how we did go by then setting out our understanding? Well, the first thing that we did was study the field. And we did so also in the context of a paper where we wrote a contribution to a roadmap. So we got together with experts in the field from a commercial and research point of view, and we analyzed what the background is, what is the context in which we were operating. So and this exemplifies how we ended up proposing Asgard as a solution. So standard augmented reality glasses use this combiner, which is the element that takes the information that typically comes from a projector and reroutes it towards the observer. Now, usually what you have is that this can be done by polishing very carefully a given surface so that then they act a bit like a mirror that then sends the light in this direction. These have limitation that they are there is a small field of view. If you move your eyes, you lose the image, and also the shape of the object is a bit unfavorable. You see, in order to have the light coming in here, the lens needs to be protruding in an odd direction, like a bug eye, if you want. It's a little bit unpleasant. So this is the standard solution that many industries are now taking. Light is now the information, the digital one is coupled to the glass that then takes the light in and then reroutes it towards the eye. This is a great advantage of being able to multiplex the image, so propose it in many different places. So this is called pupil replica. Wherever you look now, you can see the image. And it's, again, what many industries are betting on, with some complication when it comes to the aberration of the light. You have a waveguide, so this you need to handle the weight, the way in which light propagates. We can use meta materials and meta lenses in particular to have another version of the freeform optics where we can have them flat now. So we don't need anymore the bug eye effect, and we now take the image that comes in with the projector and delivers it to the eye. This is very promising. We still are limited with the field of view, but we don't have any more. We can use a flat lens now. We don't need to have a distorted lens. But we have another approach now that we can use, which is that to use the holographic metasurfaces. That was our idea, where we don't need anymore the projector to deliver the information, but you can use any simple source because the information is now directly written into the metasurface itself. So the advantage of this is that we can drastically simplify all the constructs. You don't need anymore a specialized glass to deliver the light because all the information is included in the meta lens, in the meta materials. The catch is that it is difficult to tune it. So you don't have anymore a movie that can be projected, but you have very simple images that are static. That's it. That's what you have. This is where you turn a kind of a limitation into a resource and understanding how it can be useful, because the immediacy produces the ability to turn any contact lens now, any type of glasses, sorry, into a augmented reality glass in a very, very simple way. And this can be relevant in applications where you want to deliver a very simple information, an hazard, for example, or something that is of relevance to the wearer that is triggered by external indicators. Okay, for example, this is a simple laser now or light source that is activated by sound and switches on and delivers to the wearer the immediacy of a danger, for example. So the Asgard project proposes to do this, to create simple patches that can be overlaid on glasses that already exist, cut with a clip-on optical source that is easily aligned to deliver the information to the wearer. So this is the thing that we do. And the value proposition is that this can now make a difference.
Andrea, if I may, you got a couple of minutes more, yeah?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. And then this one now can help us having a solution for people that are wearing prescription glasses that work perfectly, and they can be triggered by the response. So now the next step, so we have patented the idea, we have published it, and now we are able, thanks to this and our business strategy, to engage with end users in a variety of different sectors and move them towards also other different solutions. So we're now thinking in terms of business propositions and what is the best technical solution of our idea that might depart from the original one. This is a typical thing when you start developing technical ideas, but they can move, for example, also towards biomedical application. We're almost there. I'll just conclude by saying that the key opportunities given by the ERC instrument is the flexibility of the funding and the opportunity to adjust towards what is best needed at the point of delivery of the grant. So this is an opportunity that is absolutely not typical of standard grants, and will help us also take in different directions towards the end, adding a small element by dealing, for example, on new research, by, for example, being able to deal with incoherent sources, which are important when you deal with natural light, for example. I invite you to read this paper. Let me conclude just by saying that the proof of concepts are the ideal instrument to translate the fantastic research that comes from ERC project. There must be a clear link to the research, but not necessarily to the original aim. So this is something I'd like to emphasize. So whatever research has come out from the ERC, it might be that it's not immediately aligned with what was the original aim and purpose for the ERC project, but it's still worthwhile pursuing. And again, the spending flexibility is important. One take-home message: start early. If you feel that you don't need to wait until you have achieved some of the key objectives of the ERC to start applying for the proof of concept, it opens early for a purpose, and I invite everybody to consider this opportunity. Last, I would like to acknowledge several funding for this, chiefly the ERC, the group in particular, UHEGAN, that has been developing Asgard, but many other people that have contributed, and a number of companies that have supported the background work, and the company Big Vantage that has been instrumental in delivering Asgard, and a possibility to connect with this further work through the UK Metamaterial Network that you'll find in the UK is one of the key drivers of materials technology. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, Andrea. Fascinating stuff, and that leads us very nicely into our next part, where we look at the proof of concept from the evaluation standpoint. And for that, we have with us Robert Goodfellow, an experienced knowledge exchange facilitator, and he's been involved in several technology transfer processes. He's got more than 20 years experience in higher education institution commercialization, and he's a reviewer for the proof of concept, also a founder of a number of startups. So Robert, thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to hearing from your insights.
Thank you very much for having me today. It's very good to be here. I'm just going to try and just check that this is definitely working. Can everybody see that okay?
No, not really.
No. Okay.
Maybe you have to click OK to start presenting.
Yeah, if you have multiple screens, maybe that might be the issue.
Okay. I've only got the one screen today.
Okay, otherwise I can share that for you. Go to your slide.
Okay.
Do you want me to share?
Yes, please. Great.
Okay. Can my colleagues please indicate whether you can see slides now?
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, yeah, that's working great. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I know that we are running a little bit behind time, so I will make this quite quick. I'm Robert Goodfellow. I'm an independent consultant. I've worked within higher education for a very, very long time. Previously a Royal Society entrepreneur in residence, startup founder. I've worked with many startups around the world, been involved within the proof of concept program for the last 5 years. I think this is my last year, covering everything from life sciences through to lasers. And Antonino mentioned my experiences within tech transfer, so I have worked within universities as a head of enterprise and business development as well, so managing things from research application right through to the end of the bin out process. If you could move down probably 2 slides, that'd be great. As my colleague from Andrew said earlier, it's very much about telling a story. I have actually changed that very first line on this slide to say that we are experts, but we are not experts in everything. I think that's very important in the storytelling for the applicants, where they have 10 to 12 pages to introduce us to the technology, the background, the process, using a sort of problem solution type approach to explain what the benefits are, where they are just now in the current positions that they're in on the technology readiness, and where they want to be towards the end of the proof of concept within 12 to 18 months, and having spent that 150,000 euros or the equivalent in sterling. They really want to be involved in that journey and to understand from the reviewer's perspective of the various pieces of the jigsaw that the team will pull together in the 12 months led by the PI, and to drive the innovation forward, be it hard science or a social innovation as well. If you could move forward to the next slide, that'd be fantastic. As Lena mentioned earlier on, for each of the proposals that are received, there are 5 reviewers. We all do this independently, and we review the Part B document along with any supporting information that comes along in the form of letters of support from industry partners, or we also have access to the ethics documents and the financial spreadsheets as well, supplied by the PI. We're asked to score each proposal in the process of going through, and the 3 main heading areas that we're scoring are the project breakthrough, innovation potential, and how your project will really accelerate the current state of the art, change people's lives as a medical device or a new drug or some other technology. And we're going to look at your project approach and the methodology, again scoring this against our criteria. And the final section that we have in there is the principal investigator capacity and commitment, which is always quite an interesting section to cover off, looking at how the whole project is structured, managed, and the drive forward on the next stages of the commercialization as well. If you could go to the next slide, that'd be fantastic. From my own perspective, it's got a personal view on these. I have reviewed somewhere in the region of 250 to 300 POC proposals. So the main things that we're looking for are that really good story that will draw the reviewer in from the initial concept right through to project completion. And part of that is the well-structured plan. We all have seen very nice Gantt charts where you're planning out your project. I put the 5 W's and an H there, which always helps me to plan my own projects. It is who, what, where, when, why, and how. And to ensure that those objectives are smart, a lot of buzzwords, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. And they're also in there that you put your risk and the contingency matrix as part of your proposal. And if you are able to score that, great. Or quantify the risk as medium and low, and how within the project you're going to address and reduce those risks to a manageable level. As is our university projects, there is typically some sort of background and foreground IP to be developed, intellectual property process. We're looking to see what that is, where you may protect your intellectual property, what the strategy going forward is. You're going to continue with patenting, trademarks, design rights, software, all of these things, and how you work with your local technology transfer office or equivalent to protect that and move it forward. I've added freedom to operate in there as well, which is quite an important one, and also very difficult to gauge, even using patent agents or searching through patent databases yourself. And it's about a level of understanding that you've looked at the position, and you know that there might be other patents out there, and you'll keep an eye on the projects as you go forward and see what patents are coming through and how these relate to your own intellectual property being developed within the project. And medical devices, regulatory matters are obviously important, and how that pathway within the proof of concept can move you forward towards either starting clinical trials, preparing for the trials, or designing for the medical regulations. Standards such as ISO and what's safety. I've had several food projects that I've been involved in where they are developing novel ingredients for food, so you need to consider the local regulations for food safety both in the EU and any countries that you may be targeting beyond the proof of concept project as well. If you could go on to the next one, that would be great. I think one of the most important things within the proof of application proof of concept project itself is the understanding of the market and your competitive position. If you can provide an overview of what that market is with references from reliable sources. It's often good if you can commission a survey as part of your project, have an external market reviewer or consultant look at the market, make some introductions to potential customers. And we're looking really at what your local market is. If you're in the EU or the UK, how you can get into the EU, and also what the international market might be, as there's a lot of help available, that globalization. Within there, if you are familiar with this, sort of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats on the competitors. I remember my own acronyms. The sociological, technological, environmental, and the political analysis of the competitors and what the barriers to the market entry may be for your particular technologies. And I found that the stronger applications are combining all this and illustrating with tables or graphics showing how their product could be developed within POC is performing better in specific areas. Just a simple table or a matrix to show helps illustrate the story some more. I think one of the outcomes within the project plan should also be writing a commercialization plan to take things forward beyond POC, whether that is as a startup company, a spin-off, or licensing or future collaborations. Absolutely great. Next one, please. And I think the final few points on here are the principal investigator themselves. I'd be looking for their own experiences within commercialization, and have they done this before? Have they worked with the Technology Transfer Office to investigate licensing, startup? Have they been in part of an accelerator or incubator program? Same for the other members of the team, and what their motivation and ambition is towards translating the proof of concept towards either a new product, process, or service, or working to further that through their own team or university. The team themselves, I think it's very important to have a balance of people in there. Teams seem to have been made up with research associates and a mix of internal professional services staff and also external consultants, often providing an advisory role. I've seen this more within the medical, bio, or pharma, where there's an external advisory panel who will provide that sounding board for the market acceleration and the technology itself. I think the university research and key office needs to be an intrinsic part of the proposal and part of the team going forward at each of the viewpoints to manage the intellectual property, and be involved in the outreach, and also to manage the university's internal processes, whether it be for spin out or the licensing and the intellectual property protection. The importance of industry partners, I would say their relevance and their role within the project. We all like to have letters of support, but a letter of support that says that your industry partner will validate the technology in their own process or help you to do something is great, and providing a great benefit to the project as well, and taking things forwards from there. I think the last slide is maybe this summary slide. So yeah, so fantastic. I think the main thing is to tell a really good story. I mean, my colleague from St Andrews earlier said at the start of his presentation that bit about saying the background, what you'll do, and really pull in the reviewer's interest, because we're not experts in everything. We are good, but we don't know the ins and outs of your science. I think the leadership and the delivery of the project by the principal investigator is very important to make sure that the project remains on track. So you only have a 12-month window or 18, and when you provide that balance across the team and the delegation of the tasks to other members to ensure everything is on track. As my own background is within technology transfer, I do like the entrepreneurial ecosystem support, is to use the network around you to make your project more of a success. Involve the technology transfer team, the research and key office, speak to the local incubator and accelerator, involve them in your commercialization plan. Same for the industry and end users. How can they help accelerate your route to market? And go and talk to mentors, set up a board. And the final thing is sort of look at what your next step is in that commercialization of your project. Once you reach the end of your project, and I think, where does it go next? Are you going to apply for more funding, or look at the spin out or licensing of the technology to an end user? I think that's where the importance of having a strong commercialization plan written into your project plan comes into place. And I think From a reviewer point of view, we are given somewhere between 15, 20 proposals each time. So I think for me, definitely using a font that is not Times New Roman is very beneficial. So yeah, pretty much just thank you very much. And I think on to the last slide, and that's us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Robert, and thank you for your valuable insights. Sadly, we don't have much time now for Q&A session, but confident that the presentation was so comprehensive and informative that perhaps we have covered all that people were interested in today. I'll probably ask a question to Lina about the information for applicants, whether we can expect to have an updated version anytime soon. Correct?
Yeah, we have prepared it. We have it ready, and with the call text of the amended work program, and this is why we cannot really make it available until we have the legal basis to publish it. So it will be made available as soon as we have the adoption of the amended work program. So, but we have very few changes. Those that are sort of the legal changes that we have are in line with the other calls. So there should be no surprises in this document.
That's great. And no changes in the templates either, right?
No, apart from the call year, it's business as usual. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put in the chat also the fact that we have a dedicated applicants mailbox where you can reach the call coordination team, so you can reach us with any questions you may have, whether they are like on legal or on financial, whatever. We are ready to answer any question you may have. So that's one of the services that we have that many other Horizon calls provide.
It's very useful, and I'm also putting in the chat the functional email address of the National Contact Point Services here in the UK. So feel free to reach out to us. We'll make available the recording of this webinar on the UKRI YouTube channel, but also subject to the consent of the speakers, the slides, particularly of Claire's and Lina, but everybody's if they wish so, which are packed with a lot of useful information. Now, in the 1 minute left, let me thank again all my fantastic speakers today. Lina Volker from the ERC Executive Agency, co-coordinator for the proof of concept. My colleague Claire Griffin from the UK National Contact Point for the European Innovation Council. Then, of course, Professor and my fellow Sicilian, Professor Andrea Di Falco for his testimonial about getting an ERC proof of concept. And, of course, Robert Goodfellow, proof of concept expert evaluator assessor at the European Research Council Executive Agency. And all of you who are still with us for your attendance today, and best of luck with your applications. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye. Take care.